All right, guys, I am back. I know it's been a little bit over a year since my last video, and I do want to apologize for that. Life happens, and you just got to dive in and deal with that. But, anyways, I'm back with the State of the Collection of 2022. A lot of good tips I'm going to share here, and some of the stuff that I learned throughout this journey of collecting watches. Share some of the mistakes that I've made and some of the adjustments that I made to be where I'm at now with my collection and where I'm going hopefully in the future. So stay tuned for this one. I think you guys are really going to like this one. All right, first up on the list is going to be the Hamilton Khaki King 2. When it comes to that Swiss made entry level watches, I gotta say that Hamilton probably delivers some of the best pieces at a very affordable price range. I mean, you're talking that they even offer watches or chronographs, automatic chronographs under $3,000. And I know that sounds like a lot, but when you really factor in the prices on really high end Swiss made chronographs, you're usually gonna be in that eight, nine, $10,000 range. So for under $3,000, I gotta say, when it comes to value, Hamilton is, uh, you know, class leading. They're one of the best when it comes to that. So yeah, looking at this Hamilton khaki, I gotta say this is probably the best bang for your buck. The fit and finish is amazing. The quality control behind this brand is really outstanding, and it's really hard to wrap your mind around how they're able to do all that and still position these watches at the prices that they do. Now, with that said, there are some stuff that I do not that I was actually pretty let down. Like my expectations, because this was my first Swiss made watch. My expectations were up here, and when I got the watch, I was, when I opened up the box, I was extremely happy still. But when I got it on my hand and I put it on my wrist, my excitement down quite a few notches. With that said, segueing into the next watch here, I didn't have that same feeling that I had when I first purchased my Seiko Prospect, the SRP 773. That watch really gave me a joy. When I put it on my wrist, and even to this day, I still get that same feeling. Like it's just something about that watch, the quality control, you feel the bracelet. You really feel like you have a $400-500 watch on your hand, and when you pay that much for the watch, you like to feel that you're getting your money's worth. Not saying that you're not with the Hamilton khaki, because you definitely are. Again, a Swiss made movement in that $500 price range is not something that you're going to find that often. Yes, there are other companies that do it, like Tissot, but in general, it's not a common thing. Tissot and Hamilton, that same Swatch Group umbrella, it just kind of goes to show you that they're really in a class of their own. Um, Neither here nor there. I love the watch. There are a couple of things that I dislike about it, such as the bracelet. I'm not going to get into too much details. I'll leave that for another video. But I'll show some close-ups here of the watch so you can really take a look at what I mean. And you get to see the wear and tear that I've put on these timepieces. All right, so moving on to the next one, the Seiko Prospect SRP 773. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this is one of those watches that, again, when I purchased this watch, it met every my excitement level was up here, and even till this day, it's still there. Every time I put that watch on my wrist, it's such a comfortable timepiece. Really It doesn't age like that. That design was, designed way back in the 70s. It's just timeless. I mean, it fits on the wrist amazing. When I first seen this watch and I seen the specs, I was like, this is a pretty big watch. I don't think I'm gonna really enjoy a watch that big on my wrist. But then I went into an AD, my local AD, and then I was able to actually put the watch on my wrist, and I was blown away by how well that fits on my wrist and how well it fits on many other wrists. So even if you have a smaller wrist, I would say definitely try it on before you scratch it off of your list, because it definitely wears a lot smaller than the specs would imply. But neither here nor there. The loom is outstanding. The finish on this watch is amazing. The bezel action, it's really good, but it's a Seiko signature bezel. Like it has like this kind of a mushy effect when you're turning that bezel. It kind of feels like a plastic underneath that, and that is something that typically, again, with these higher end watches, you wouldn't expect to see. But it's not a bad bezel. It's something that you got to really feel it for yourself, so that you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Okay, so moving on to the next watch, the Seiko 5 Sport SNZH57. Now, I gotta say, Seiko is not the greatest when naming their watches, and I wish they would just nickname them before anyone else starts nicknaming them, because the nicknames are usually pretty obvious. Anyways, this watch is one of those watches that when I purchase, which by the way, it's almost impossible to get right now, and if you do find one, you're gonna get it for well over the retail price. Initially, I bought this watch for somewhere in the $140 price range, 130, and right now you can find them, which is not available, but on eBay they're going for 250. And the only place right now that still has it for retail is Joma Shop, but they're out of stock, and they've been out of stock for months. But neither here nor there. This is a watch that I really fell in love with. The only gripe that I have with this watch is the fact that it's not a hand wind movement. It's just an automatic, and it's not a screw down crown. Now, when you look at this watch, you immediately think diver. This is a diver. No, this is a dive style watch, and this is a great example of what a dive style watch is. Eliminating all the or better said, cutting down on the price by eliminating those dive watch features such as a screw down crown, um, things of that nature. But neither here nor there, it still has a great, reliable movement, a workhorse of a movement. And it's a movement that Seiko has really used throughout a lot of watches in their lineup. So, again, this is a watch that, if you look at it, for me, I don't know, it's not for everyone. Some people may look at it and say, well, I don't like the gold indices. It just kind of doesn't go with the dive vibe. But I like it. I think it's a nice watch. Now, what I will say is I've seen the black one and I've seen the blue one. Those actually attract me more now. Like I'm really attracted to that colorway a lot more. But when I got this watch, I had a budget, and this was the cheaper one of the bunch, and that's the reason why I have this one and not the other ones. Now the other ones are also have gone up in price. They've gone from like 160, 170 to about 200. Which I guess that's a part of the inflation going on. On to the next watch. We have the Seiko SNKM97. Again, sorry about these these model numbers. I'm not the one that make them. This is Seiko. This is a watch that when I first purchased, and I put it on the wrist with the original strap, it was puny. It really scared me. I was like, 38 shouldn't be that bad. But when I got it on the wrist, I didn't realize, again, back to, a tradition Seiko has of making these round cases or turtle style cases. And this one, it's not a turtle. It's not quite a turtle, but it has that round case design, and the lugs are very, very short. The crown is at the 4 o'clock. At 38 millimeters, this watch wore very small on my wrist, and I kind of gave it to my wife, and I was like, yeah, it's not for me. It's just too small. Well, recently I went and I purchased a leather NATO strap. I'm in love with the watch, and I've worn it since. This is a tip that I highly recommend you adopt in your collection: is constantly, instead of continuously buying watches every single time, take a little bit of money aside and buy some straps, because a strap can really change the feel of a watch. It can really change how you view that watch. It can change how much you wear that watch. It really feels like you have a different watch on your hand, and that's a big tip. It doesn't seem like something um, that big of a deal, but it really is. I promise. Once you throw it on a different strap, you'll see what I'm talking about. Moving on to the next one. This is the Seiko 5 SNKM97. This is a very retro design watch. When I first seen this watch, I fell in love with it immediately. So I'm a sucker for vintage style watches. It's a design that really, when I see them, I just like it's hard for me not to drool over it. Anyways, this watch, when I seen it, I fell in love with it, and I was gonna pick it up, and then turns out my brother ended up gifting me that watch for my birthday. And it's one of those watches that I genuinely love looking at. Like, when you look at this dial, when you look at the combination of that green dial, that green sunburst dial, and then that orange second hand just sweeping across that 70s retro vibe dial. I mean, it is amazing. Um, it is an unorthodox design. You have that kind of squared case. It's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And it's probably the reason why it doesn't get that much wrist time. But also because it's one of those watches that doesn't quite fit my lifestyle. The kind of work that I do, the way that I dress, it's not one of those watches that I can just smack on the wrist. It really look out of place. But every now and then I still rock it anyways. I don't care. Maybe I just need to take my own advice and smack a leather strap on that bad boy, and I think it'll probably take on a whole new vibe. So yeah, that's probably gonna be what I'm gonna do, and you'll see me do a video on that one. All right, so on to the next one is the Orient Mako II. Now I have two of these. I have the all black matte dial one, which, oh my god, and I also have the Orient Mako II in, I want to call it the Pepsi. It's really hard not to call it the Pepsi because of the obvious color scheme. Anyways, the dial on that watch, it's really freaking outstanding, man. When you look at that dial, you immediately, see, I don't know, maybe I'm just over exaggerating this, but I feel like when I look at that dial, it feels like a $500-600 watch. It's an amazing dial. It's kind of has like this sunburst, but it's not quite extremely shiny, kind of a lacquered, I think is what they refer to that as. Anyways, beautiful dial. And the finish on this case is amazing. The polish, the brush, I mean, really, Orient outdid themselves with these Mako watches. I gotta say, and let me pause real quick before I move on. When you think of um, value for money, I must say that right now, and this is just my opinion, but I really genuinely believe this. Orient is the best in that category in terms of we'll say excluding Swiss made watches, and just kind of sticking to that. Really, who's doing it right now? Besides Seiko. And I'm not talking about micro brands. Micro brands is not something that I've dabbled in just yet. Yeah, I've bought a lot in the past, and I've even done reviews on some of these these other companies that do homages. But again, this is kind of a shift in my collection. This is a shift in my journey of watch collecting, watch enthusiast, whatever you want to call it. But I gotta say, Orient is number one in this class when it comes to value for money, the quality control, the designs. I mean, overall, outstanding watches, and most importantly, in house made movements. At the price range that you're getting these watches, it's really hard to wrap your head around that. And the Orient Mako II is probably going to be one of my favorite dive style watches. And I'm going to say dive style watches because it's not really certified as a diver, but this thing is very well capable of water activities. When you look at the fit and finish of this watch, in fact, it's actually the one that I'm wearing right now. Let's see if I can get you a close up there. That matte dial is just amazing. The indices are applied indices. The lume on this watch is really good for the price. The bezel action, I mean, just listen to this. It's just a very satisfying thing. And even listening to and I'm going to give you some more close ups of this watch, but even listening to the whining of this, let me take a listen to this. It's a crunchy wind. Um, Again, I'm just a big fan of the Orient brand. I think they have a lot to bring to the table. Um, it, all of their watches, I have yet to see an Orient that I do not like. From the Bambinos to the Defenders, these are all watches that ultimately are going to make their way into my collection. Um, there's probably one more watch that I want Swiss made before I start looking right back into like the entry levels of Seiko and Orient, things of that nature. Okay, now these are two classics that I think these are gonna become classics. The Casio Duros. The I gotta say that Casio did a fantastic job with this. When you think of Casio, you don't really think of them doing a analog watch this way that they did it with the Casio Duro. It really is a capable watch with diving screw down crown, 200 meters of water resistant. It's a 60 click bezel. It's not a bad bezel. It fits its price range. The loom, it's not bad. Again, it fits its price range as well. The dial finish is amazing. Now, what I do like about the Duros, and you'll see this in these close-ups that I'm about to show, is this quartz movement that it has in it. There is almost no bounce back. It lands on every single indices, and I love the way they, at least on the black one, the way that the seconds hand has that red, that little dip of red on it. I mean, I really love these watches, and I love wearing them when I go fishing. When I'm doing more active activities, these are watches that I tend to wear, just simply because, I mean, they're really rugged watches. They can handle anything you throw at them. Yeah. Okay, so some tips that I want to share with you guys in this journey of watch collecting. If you're new to it, and you're as crazy about collecting watches as I am, early on in my venture of collecting watches, I made these mistakes, and that was hoarding watches and not collecting watches. By that I mean letting emotions drive you every time you go on Amazon, every time you go on Joma Shop, every time you go on eBay or any of these websites, and start picking up a bunch of watches that ultimately within 30-40 minutes of it arriving at your doorsteps, you're kind of you lose that excitement, right? And that's in part because you're really purchasing impulsively, and we all are guilty of doing this. In fact, I was too. But it's a lot more fun when you put more thought behind it, when you do your research, when you watch videos on these watches. If you can't go into an AD and see how it fits on your wrist, watch as many videos as you can on a watch that you're interested in buying, and then buy it. Once you feel that you've collected enough information to make a informative decision. Another thing too that I've adopted into my journey of collecting watches, and that is buying watches that fits my lifestyle, and then that gives me that excitement that I was describing earlier when I purchased my Seiko Prospect. That right there is long lasting. When you have that, when you buy a watch that fits your lifestyle, and I say that because when it fits your lifestyle, you're gonna wear it more often. You're gonna give it more wrist time. And then also, as I was saying earlier, um, straps. It's very important that you dress your watch, right? And by dressing, I mean continuously swapping out the strap every now and then. When you start feeling like that excitement over that watch is not the same, and it's been in the watch box for a little over a week now, and you haven't rocked it anymore, smack it on another strap and see how you feel about it. You may end up finding that's all it needed for you to re-spark that excitement up again and wear that watch more consistently. Um, with that said, guys, those are all the tips that I have. As you can see, my collection has been narrowed down. I went from at one point having 36 watches that I never wore at all. There was literally only a small portion of that collection that I actually wore. Everything else was stuff that I kind of acquired for impulsively. So now that I've kind of refined my collection and I have more of a game plan behind purchasing the watch, I feel like you guys are going to be able to get more or get more informative videos out of this channel, and then also more interesting videos, right? Because you'll be able to see how uh, my journey in this collecting of watches kind of takes different paths as I go on. Anyways, I really appreciate you guys tuning into this video. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Hit that bell icon so you're notified as future videos come out. And please drop a like. And hey, if you've been guilty of any of these mistakes that I've done in my watch collecting journey, please drop it in the comments below. That'll help the algorithm. Till the next one, stay tuned.